All right, everyone, welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's October 20th, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team while showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. Our call today is recorded. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy our content and want to support it, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. So with that said, let's jump into some announcements here. So one of the first announcements was a unofficial proof of concept. My dog's gonna go nuts until he gets his ball, if you guys don't mind. Oh man, Charlie, you put it all the way in there. There we go.
Throw the ball, Eric. It's your duty.
It's my duty to dog in my country. Okay. So Mitchell Hashimoto is working on a experimental provider showing a concept of how you can work across multiple workspaces in Terraform Cloud. Or if you can think, another way to think about it is how to do multiple root modules with Terraform. And I think this is interesting because from my perspective, this is almost like the first time in the history of Terraform that they come out with like, or acknowledge the fact that your state is not in one project and in one, root module, that you might have multiple root modules and you might want to trigger one module after the other and how to do that. So I thought this was really cool. And Terraform Provider Multispace is what he's calling it. It works together with Terraform Cloud. The idea is that you embed this resource in your project, and you can use that to then cascade other workspaces to run as part of once your workspace applies successfully. Now, have not kicked the tires and even looked on it. We're not really big Terraform Cloud users at this time. We use more Spacelift right now. I do want to just point out the wart that all of these solutions have, because we have the same wart. We've done it in a different way using Rego policies and Spacelift that we can set up dependencies between stacks. This is all fine and dandy, but the problem is when you run a Terraform plan, what you're going to see is kind of like this one workspace, and then like everything else will be computed at runtime or whatever the message is in Terraform, right? You're not going to see the impact of your change on all these other remote states. So when you do this, it's great that there's a way to automate it, but it still leaves a lot to be desired, even with what we're doing with Rego policies in Spacelift. Has anybody checked this out or gone deeper on this? All right. So the other announcement, this was exciting for me only because we have a lot of customers that are on Office 365, and one of our primary recommendations when provisioning AWS accounts is just to use plus addressing, since every account needs a unique email address in AWS. And well, that really sucks with historically with Office 365, because you had to provision every email address that you would use when you needed it, and it's not very automated when you have to do that. So the fact that you can do G Suite style, Google style plus addressing with email addresses there now, that was exciting for me. I don't know when this came out, but I think it is in the last 6 months or so. This article was just updated this week or so, or last week. Another announcement. So I have a theory. Well, I wouldn't say it's Eric Osterman's theory, but the success of many languages out there stems from also having a registry. If we think about back in the days of Perl and CPAN, like that was amazing. There was a module for everything. And then there was Rails and Ruby gems, and then you had, or Ruby and Ruby gems. and then ultimately, Docker. And was Docker really that much more amazing than running, VMware? I remember when that came out, that was kind of mind blowing. But the problem with VMware is they never had this registry, and I went a very different route in the end. I think what part of the big success of Docker has been the registry to make it really accessible and to distribute images. Moving on then to Terraform and Terraform's registry, I think that's been a phenomenal way to share infrastructure code. So Pulumi now has finally come out with their registry, and this will probably be a turning point in adoption for the Pulumi tool. So Pulumi is a alternative, of course, to Terraform. It allows you to use whatever formal language you like to use, whether it be Python, TypeScript, Go, etc., and write your infrastructure code in the way you're accustomed to. With the most recent announcement of the new AWS, was it CC API? I forget what it was called.
Cloud Control API.
Yeah, Cloud Control API. This is gonna, play very well in Pulumi's court, I think, and not relying as much as they have historically on Terraform providers to implement infrastructure as code. Anybody? Do we have any Pulumi users on the call? We are very focused on Terraform, so we get a little bit of an echo chamber here. I wish we could get some.
I have some colleagues that are using it.
Hey, Mark. Good to hear.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. But yeah, since this, I assume you haven't heard anything from your colleagues since this announcement is so new, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what this changes.
Did a bunch of proof of concepts with Pulumi. I see its role. I'm not using it actively with any customers. And I also want to mention that Pulumi was a launch partner for the AWS Cloud Control API. Like they launched the provider the day it was launched, and they had an awesome blog post on this.
HashiCorp was a launch partner too, no? Just to be clear.
Yep, but their blog post was delayed by a couple hours. I was very excited.
It was deployed with Terraform instead of Pulumi, and that's why. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I heard good things about the Pulumi post on that. I haven't caught up on it. Definitely have some FOMO when it comes to Pulumi. All right, this was pretty cool. I didn't like the way they described it. So Docker Registry Failover Operator is my terminology for it, or branding for it. Fairwinds, formerly Reactive Ops, they contribute a lot of awesome open source, specifically in the Kubernetes realm. Goldilocks for helping you right size your pods. Pluto for helping you discover deprecated API versions. We use Pluto a bunch before we do Kubernetes upgrades. So this latest tool by them is Saffire, and it is fun to poke. I always like poking fun at Docker Hub, right? And the outage is there, and how we get bit with that. And then the next one down is Quay. I think Quay has actually historically been more unreliable probably than Docker Hub, and it goes from there. So we could say that we should just upgrade and use more stable registries. And one of the things I would recommend, and we do it for one of our customers at least, is vendoring third-party Docker images in your own ECR, so that isolates you a little bit. Doesn't help you if there's a systemic problem with ECR. But what the point is with this operator is that, well, unlike DNS, where you can very easily fail over to the next A record, or next IP in an A record. There's no concept of failover with Docker in this sense, in Kubernetes at least. And so what this does is it allows you to define alternate sources for any Docker image. And if the Docker pools are failing, it'll dynamically reconfigure to pull from another registry. So that's why I call it like a Docker registry failover operator. Yeah. This, of course, means that you can have mirrors, essentially, of Docker images. Has anyone, I haven't looked into it, But is there like a Docker Hub registry mirror out there? And same thing for Quay or any service out there doing that. I know Amazon was doing something about mirroring some mainstream Docker images. No. All right. So that was that announcement. This was one I got actually via, or I was turned on to it by Anton Babenko, and then I realized that we were already using it in a bunch of our Terraform modules at Cloud Posse, so I guess my team knows about it. It was new for me, so that's why I call it a little bit obscure. I thought it was cool because what this provider does is expose a few obvious resources that have different benefits. So one here, the one that like Anton linked to, is sleep. So yeah, you don't need to use the local exec anymore to do a sleep. You can use a first class citizen to just sleep with native Terraform. But I thought this one was pretty cool. Time rotating. So imagine that you're provisioning IAM keys using Terraform, but you want to make sure that they expire every 90 days or every 30 days. This makes that really easy because you can just reference time rotating. And so long as you have a pipeline that is continuously evaluating your Terraform code for drift, this will help you rotate your credentials on schedule. So for example, we use Spacelift in a lot of our engagements. With Spacelift, we can configure a cron schedule to rerun every stack that we have. So basically, for our customers, every night at like 4 a.m. or something, all 1,000 stacks or whatever replan to confirm there's no drift. This would catch that if an IAM key needs to be rotated.
This is awesome. I didn't know this was a thing. How long has it been around?
You know, so I was trying to write it off like, hey, it's new, and that's why I don't know about it. So this is the wrong one, the wrong repo here. Time for provider time. So the history, maybe it shares. Charlie, no. Maybe this shares the history with some other repo or Git tree, but like the first commit was 2 years ago. I don't think it could be 2 years old. But it's only started recently getting a lot of commits here now in the last couple months. That's why I'm hoping that it's really just maybe 4 or 5 months old.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, your IAM use case is great, but I have clients that I could use this on rebuilding, or not rebuilding, but updating the new AMIs. You know, like when if you're always using the latest AMI, you always have plan changes because AWS is always pushing out a new Amazon Linux 2. But this would be great. I'll probably end up using this in the next week. That's awesome. It's a good one.
That's cool. Woohoo, score. Anybody else have any other use cases for this right now?
No, but I have Matt's use case.
That is a good one. Like also, yeah, enforcing that you update your image, your images or EC2 instances every 30 days or something, right? I like it. Terraform for accounting. And this last one was something I forget where I stumbled across it. Oh yeah, this was West Los Angeles DevOps Corey.tech newsletter. He posted this. This is really cool. So automatic remediation of Kubernetes nodes, and I haven't tested this or anything. Was just skimming over it, but I like the approach a lot. So it's broken down into 3-4 pieces. First is a node problem detector. So you deploy this as daemon set across all the nodes, and it understands if there's any problem with that node. Then Draino will naturally, when that node has a problem, it will coordinate itself. So new workloads don't get scheduled and then drain. And then kured is a daemon that looks for the present of shit. Yeah. So basically, I guess this just marks the node somehow as unhealthy. Then kured drains it. And I'm not sure, how legit this is for production, but I like the approach that they were taking in solving this. This is one of these situations where you might have one sick node in your cluster, and that's causing a degradation of your services. How could you auto heal that node in some programmatic fashion?
I used Node Problem Detector extensively in the past. It's absolutely awesome. You can write checks for it that can do whatever you want. We even at some point used it to do, hey, is this node too old and using an AMI that's too old? If so, attach a label to it and kill it.
That's cool.
And I know AWS is looking into adding this to EKS. They have an open issue on the containers roadmap that's in researching stage. So they're at least looking at it. And I think that the cloud provider actually handling this would be a so much better fit.
Yeah. Oh, and this is actually a mainstream Kubernetes top level Kubernetes project. I didn't realize. I always think it's funny. I'll rediscover things like they're brand new, and they say, "Oh shit, I already started that thing." So
I linked the EKS issue in the chat.
oh, cool. Thanks.
It does have many things in there.
That's cool. All right. That's it for my announcements. Let's jump into a Q&A here. Matteo, are you on the call today? I saw your question.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so Matteo, I kind of paraphrased this in a different way, but I'll touch on how you asked it. So your question was how to orchestrate across the 4 layers of infrastructure, and could a tool like Terragrunt solve that? So to fill everybody else in, this is what I call in my big picture page here, the 4 layers of infrastructure. Let this image pop up here. There it is. These are the 4 layers. And what I frequently say is that the software development lifecycle of each one of these layers is isolated from the other layers, and you first have to lay down your foundation before you can begin to lay down your platform, before you can begin to lay down your shared services, before you can actually deploy your applications. And because these are disconnected in that way, Matteo's question is, well, what if I want to roll this whole thing out from top to bottom? Are there tools that would help me do that? Is that accurate, Matteo?
Yeah,
or
more or less. I mean, basically, it's easy to split up when you have an infrastructure completely deployed in Terraform and a platform layer completely deployed, say, with Helm. And in that case, it's easy to have a Terraform than a Helm file. In my case, I have the infrastructure layer, which is both Terraform. One side is the whole VPCs and stuff. And the second part is the EKS deployment. I was wondering, how do you deal when you have a single tool, which is Terraform, to try to keep it dry, as they say, and have, to deploy the 2 sides of the infrastructure, which is anyway not part of the same layer.
Yeah. So the way that we think about it now, and this wasn't obvious to me when we started working with it, and I don't think a lot of companies think of it this way yet, but working with the Spacelift tool. So when I talk about Spacelift, it's this service here, spacelift.io. And what we are really saying when we want to do that is we want a policy. We want a policy like when the VPC changes that we update then the EKS cluster, or plan that. Or when we deploy the EKS cluster, then we want a policy that we deploy the ALB load balancer controller to that cluster. At least in the Spacelift parlance, that's what it is. And they use Rego to express this. So what this allows you to do then is define declaratively your dependencies so that when you roll out one piece, it can roll out the other pieces as well. I'll be on. Well, okay, so that's one way. The other thing is that you saw that the first announcement that I had today on the HashiCorp, not on the HashiCorp, on the Mitchell's private pet project to do, what do you call it? Multi-space, provider multi-space. This is trying to solve that kind of problem. So you have your VPC module, and you want your VPC module now to bring up your EKS cluster. But just saying that, I feel dirty. Like, it sounds wrong, because what does the VPC have to do with your EKS cluster? This is like one solitary use case. And the way I would think about it is, does the VPC exist with or without a Kubernetes cluster? And I guess for some companies, you could say that's true. But in the long run, that's not true. You have your load balancers in there. You got your databases, your Redis clusters, your Kafka clusters. So there's really, that's why it helps me at least to think about this so much by not coupling platform level services like a Kafka cluster with infrastructure level services like a VPC. So can you do what you're doing with tools like Terragrant? Totally. Can you do it with Spacelift? Totally. Can you do it with this new thing that Mitchell pushed out there? Probably. But should we? I don't know. So
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's also like a cold start problem. Like it's something you do when you spin it up, and whether you want to spend a lot of time orchestrating that, I guess it depends if it's something your company does frequently versus can you do wiki ops and document it. So.
If I could add something, one thing that Eric, I remember you sharing one of your earlier office hours was this notion of having multiple different layers in your stack. In 4 categories, if I remember correctly. You have your
this one here.
Thank you. Yep, that's it. And it's like, and I look at that and I think like really what we're looking at is like 4 different kind of like speeds by which Delta gets deployed to the infrastructure, right? And at your topmost layer, this is where your applications are changing. This is where your daily patches go out. This is where your updates are happening on a very frequent basis. And at the base layer, these are much less frequent. And so like when I think of it that way, it helps me to kind of like split up my Terraform infrastructure and my deployment pipelines such that the lower level stuff really only gets deployed very infrequently and with, like 2 people review, right?
Yeah.
Because this is kind of like core kind of stuff. Maybe a distinct team owns this stuff. And then your middle layers, maybe you're at your team level, and then your top layer at the developers, they could just like throw that stuff out there every day.
Yeah. It's like quarterly at the bottom, monthly at the platform, semi-monthly at the shared services, and daily at the application layer.
Yeah, something like that for sure.
That, for example.
Yeah.
All right. Next question was a good one from Blaze. Blaze, are you here today? Doesn't look like he's made it yet, but we'll cover it anyways because it's an easy one. So anybody out there doing demos like, hey, this is our awesome new release engineering process, or this is our brand new way of running Kubernetes, needs to have some way to showcase that work. How do you do demos for things? Or if you had a service mesh product, how would you demo that your service mesh product is the next best thing since sliced bread for microservices? Well, you need a demo app, and how complicated or simple it is depends on how much you want to convey with your demo. The obvious one for anybody who's ever done any tutorial for Kubernetes is, of course, the guestbook app, and it's pretty boring. A fancier one that we used to use, but I would say it's almost over the top. This is on like if the Echo server is on the far left of being the simplest app you can deploy, well, then the Socks Shop by Weaveworks is probably the most complicated. It's like a full-on e-commerce app made for selling a bogus product of socks. And it's all on GitHub, and you can clone it. Let's see if it's still up to, yeah, dude, they're still keeping this thing up to date. So that's impressive. So it's broken into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 microservices that you can then demonstrate your new fancy, preview environment workflows for, which we tried to do, and boy, that was hard. And yeah, so go on.
Microsoft I also have a series of apps on this. I linked to one of them in the chat. I basically made the most over in the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay.
I can send it on Slack if it's easier. But yeah, I made the
awesome.
world's most over-engineered Hello World because I needed some microservices that talked between each other so I can actually show connections. If you scroll a tiny bit, there's going to be an image. There you go. So it's a React frontend that's calling to a service to get hello and to another service to get world. And you can change it to be like hello, Eric, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a couple of services. It's very easy to understand, and it's something that I can actually show communication and stuff. The services don't communicate between each other, but that's it. I'm also using this for trainings, like being able to change a service. So instead of returning a hard-coded name, they're getting one from DynamoDB or RDS is awesome. And yes, that's what I wanted to get to. For more complex demos, I'm linking to a bunch of things. Microsoft's one
Yeah.
is awesome.
Let me pull that up
It's
there.
kind of Azure focused, but
This
it's
is
awesome.
eShop
And I
on containers.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's also demo for .NET and ASP.NET, but it's really well done, especially if you want to show code. And the last example in there, it's a medium.com clone that I think has 2 services, and it's written in multiple languages.
Mm.
And there are a bunch of implementations available from the open source community. And it's lovely if you want to do something deeper into code, but not selling socks, multiple microservices examples. I think they have a
That's
website
cool.
somewhere that's linking to everything. But
That's cool.
finding the right balance of simple, but still, like with my apps, you cannot demo tracing. That's
Yeah.
just not enough depth. But you can
Yeah.
easily do a demo of, hey, this is how we deploy an app. This is how we connect it to a database and things like that.
Yeah, that's true. And you have some GitHub actions in here demonstrating some workflows, build.
Oh, they're just pushing the image so people can
Okay.
pull them, and I can pull them. They're pushed to ECR public, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Any other tips out there for demo repos, for repos for doing demos, services for doing demos with? This is great. I like these. Thanks, thanks, Vlad, for sharing. All right, so let's see, what else do we have to cover here? I'm gonna check the chat here. Looking for workshops and trainings. You were asking, Vlad?
Well, I was asking, sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm also using it for work. I misread it. I misread your message. Yeah. Yep.
No, we were chatting about ECR public in the Zoom chat.
Okay, I see there. Yeah, I'm just catching up there. Oh, Andy, can you help copy some of these messages into the office hours Slack?
Sure.
Thanks. Wow, I'm surprised here. You're saying, to be fair, I'm seeing CDKTF to be the next big deal for Terraform and infrastructure as code instead of Pulumi and CDK. That's a statement right there. I would not expect to hear. Can you share a little bit more on that one?
Yeah. So, oh my God, hold on. I camera
Because
went weird.
to me, it felt like CDKTF was dead on arrival, or like I hear nothing about it. And if I could hear something about somebody like that, this is gaining traction in some circles, that, well, you know, power to it. That's great to hear.
It's pre-GA, so I'm
Okay.
not expecting people to actually like be using it in production. But oh my God, I really have to finish a blog post where I I write down all these thoughts. But yeah, I don't see people suddenly moving to do CDK, like folks that are using Terraform suddenly
Yeah.
going and
Yeah.
doing CloudFormation. There are fundamental differences there, to put it mildly, and it's a totally different experience. So I don't see CDK taking over that part. I do see a future in which CDK-TF is used to generate Terraform code that is then picked up by something like Atlantis, like Spacelift, like M0. Because I'm saying all this based on what I've talked to people and on an awesome blog post from AWS that was showing, I'm looking for the link right now, that was showing, hey, this is how you can do CDK. And I tweeted about it and I found it. Give me a second to actually get the link, because there are like 50 redirects that my ad blocker is removing. Oh my God. Give me a second. And yeah, this is it. So this was a great example that didn't have the classic convoluted way of, if you scroll a bit, there's a screenshot from Visual Studio. Scrolls. This is the CLI. That's it. The screenshot just above.
Okay.
Yeah, that. And that's something that every developer can instantly understand. It's basically two different projects inside the same folder in Visual Studio. It's super, super, super easy to understand for a developer. And a developer coming in here, modifying two things, the CI then running CDK-TF to generate the Terraform code and putting it into a folder. It's a very, very developer-friendly workflow. I see that being awesome because it allows developers to easily do infrastructure changes while still using Terraform modules and everything, outputting the Terraform and still using the same power that we have for Terraform. It's just abstracting away the HCL that people don't want to learn. And if you're doing something super mega extra complex, it's abstracting away loops and other things, but I still maintain my vision that only a few people actually have stuff that complex and that most aren't going to use this. But this is an awesome, awesome developer experience. Just being able to go, quickly understand it, and then still output Terraform code that we have pipelines for. I see that being a winning proposal. I don't know if we're going to get there and if it's going to get implemented correctly and how long is it going to take and all that. But I see it being awesome.
That's cool. Well, thank you for backing that up. I see what you're saying.
I could be wrong. We'll see. This is still super early.
Yeah.
You think
Right.
that the mechanics, Vlad, do you think that the mechanics of Terraform are due for a generational change? Because like when I see Terraform, I think of like, okay, here's a state transition engine, but it's got a single shot mechanism. Your manifest files are simply like declarations of resources and combined with the ability to chain dependencies, right? And then so when Terraform runs, it takes your resources and applies them in order. Boom, single shot. Which is it does what it does. It's a lot better than when it started. It's a lot more stable when it started. And it's like, okay, now it's reached that level of kind of like, okay, it's stable, right? And Terraform 1.0. But like, does that mechanism itself, like the single shot transition, need updating? And I think does the Cloud Control API kind of open the door for that? Because now we don't have to have like crazy generated SDKs in order to manipulate resources. You have thoughts on that?
Don't think so. So both the CDK and CDK for Terraform and Pulumi, as far as I know, even though I haven't played with it in a while. So we're gonna ignore Pulumi for now. I'm sorry, Pulumi. If there's anybody that knows that, please jump in. But both CDK and CDK for Terraform generate YAML and HCL. So they're still outputting the same thing. It's just doing a more convoluted way. Instead of you writing it, you're writing code, doing some voodoo and symphing and bullshit. Sorry. And then outputting CloudFormation and outputting Terraform. So it's still the same workflow. I hope we're gonna see Terraform and CloudFormation maybe in the future when the community moves and we have enough higher level constructs become something like assembly language. Like if you need to dive deep into it, you can, but most people don't stress at that level. Regarding your question of, are we gonna see a change? I change it with what? Because there is no proposal around that. If you want to go from that classic workflow of you have a infrastructure as code, you are gonna get to something else. Basically, you have a set of changes that you do, as you described it very well. Okay, what do we change it with? With code that self-modifies itself and does a bunch of calls and logic? That will add a lot of complexity.
We have an example in the industry right now. Like Kubernetes is that example. So the way Kubernetes operates is you just supply a manifest, and every single component in that resource chain will essentially back off and try again until convergence is reached. So like, and this is how we're able to see Kubernetes systems kind of like converge on the correct state. Whereas in Terraform, it's a single shot. If there's an error, an operator has to step in and fix it, right? In Kubernetes, if like an image isn't finished being uploaded, for example, it'll back off and try again a little bit later. And then eventually, once the image is fully updated and uploaded, then it'll deploy. It might take a little bit longer, but it'll become eventually consistent. So I guess one possible future for this Terraform infrastructure as code space is Kubernetes style eventual consistency. That's one possibility. There's others out there.
That's a really interesting analogy. Yeah, I like it.
We have infrastructure as code options there already. We have Crossplane, which is trying to do this across projects, across things, across a bunch of things. And we have a GA and stable product. They just GA'd it last week on Monday, AWS Cloud Controllers for Kubernetes, which again is done by AWS, managed by AWS, supported by AWS, that does exactly that. Basically, you say you want an S3 bucket, but you're writing a YAML, which is not the same YAML as CloudFormation. It's its own YAML format thingy.
Oh,
and yeah, it's stable, it works. It's Crossplane is pretty much pushing the envelope in that space as far as I'm seeing.
You say Crossblade or Crossplane?
Crossplane.io. They have ice cream as a logo.
Aha. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, thank you.
.io. I think this is them. And they have, if you scroll APIs for, well, not API groups, just like how you have deployments, they have for AWS, for Equinix, for Alibaba Cloud, and all that. And as far as I know, it's stable, I think. I know a bunch of people that are using it. Do you see this being a big deal in the Kubernetes world? But I don't know if it's going to go beyond enterprises. Because what the big problem is, you now have all your state in a Kubernetes cluster, which is an interesting problem you have. It's solvable. There are ways to solve it. People are working on it, but it's an interesting added complexity level. And now, by taking this operator, this pattern, you're moving into something generating YAMLs, which is, okay, we were already doing that. There are use cases for this, which is awesome. Yes, I can chat about this. I work with some NDA companies, clients that are working, like their whole infrastructure is basically operators in Kubernetes creating these YAMLs on demand, doing stuff on demand, and then they are picked up by Crossplane, by ACK to actually create infrastructure, because they need that dynamic infrastructure creation, and this is a pattern that works well for them. But it's such a specialized use case, and it's so complex.
Yeah, I would imagine standing something up like that would be a lot of effort. That the payoff would have to be really kind of like attuned to the business requirements in order to actually justify that kind of like time to build it. Would you say?
I agree. Like, we've worked a lot on it. It's super complex. Let me link to, oh my god, this is such a terrible website. I wanted to link to the ACK website, but that's okay. Let's go with the RDS control. I'm trying to find some nice documentation that is not an outdated blog post or a video. I can do apologies for this. I was not past week. Okay, past month. It went GA at AWS Container Day, so I'm expecting something. No, we don't have anything. Okay, this is just gonna be it. Sorry. I'm linking it in Zoom right now. But yeah, it's super complex. It is a different pattern. For some use cases it's going great, but I don't think we're there, not necessarily technologically, but as a community. Like, most people aren't used to Kubernetes and the whole operator pattern, and I put a YAML and something always runs and the state is reconciled and changes happen. That's still weird for people. Getting people used to that is going to be an uphill battle. Go ahead, Eric.
I mean, it is weird. I mean, so it's elegant in its solution, but it's kind of weird in the end to kind of understand what's going on in the system. And we bring this up with talking with customers on release engineering. And okay, so we're going to deploy your app. How are you going to run your application database migrations? Are they going to be in your CI pipeline? Are they going to run in Kubernetes? Okay, if they're running in Kubernetes, where are we going to run them in Kubernetes? Okay, if we run them as a job, okay, what happens if that job is failing? Should you keep retrying indefinitely your migration? Should your application suddenly magically roll back? Or it's really weird working in these decentralized manners.
Infrastructure should be boring. That's a big target. Like, let's focus on making money, not on configuring Kubernetes. There are valid use cases when we want to configure Kubernetes and get deep into that, but that shouldn't be the goal. And I don't think this is boring yet. I hope it's gonna get more adoption, but we need to have the use cases for it because it's a big mentality change. Just like we had to get people accustomed to, hey, yeah, now we don't do infra by clicking in the console or by doing PowerShell scripts with AWS commands. We're doing Terraform, we're doing CloudFormation. That was a big cultural change. Proposing another big cultural change needs to come with some awesome benefits. And I don't see the transition from Terraform CloudFormation to something like Crossplane or ACK making that strong of a proposal and being that strong of a draw for most people. I could be wrong.
I think in terms of adoption though, like coming back to that four layer infrastructure, that dynamic infrastructure adjustments, that's going to happen at the application layer, at the very top layer first, and then over time it'll start to whittle down.
Mature.
We're seeing that come with products like the recently made public, maybe preview, whatever, serverless cloud, where you're basically using code and your code is kind of provisioning infrastructure. Well, it's actually provisioning infrastructure. Serverless framework, Serverless Inc., the folks behind the serverless framework, launched serverless cloud, which is an interesting new service.
Interesting, because they had their like CD offering for a while.
Yeah,
but
it's
now
right there on
they're
the
hosting.
right. Serverless cloud. Download it.
There we go. Yeah.
It's
I missed this.
unexpected for me in its current state. I expected them to go in a different direction, but I'm very excited to see where they're going because they're doing something awesome. Like, if you change your code, you get your code deployed and working in less than a second consistently.
Yeah.
And that's one of those big changes that are worth it for folks to, oh yes, I want to do this. It's worth for me to learn it. It's not just, oh, a different flavor of YAML.
Yeah, it makes me think of Zeit a little bit, but for serverless. Yeah.
Yep.
Or Zeit, formerly known as Now, formerly known as something else, formerly known as, I don't know.
Yeah, but there's a lot of flux. There are a lot of experiments going on because infrastructure, shockingly, is still hard. And it's still a blocker for a lot of people. But we'll see what actually moves. Like, we still have stuff coming out like the Copilot CLI, which is a CLI to create your infrastructure. Which is interesting that we're still doing that right now.
That is.
It's awesome for demos and getting people up to speed quick, and it's still using some infrastructure as code config through other YAML files, but we'll see where that goes. So I don't know. I really see the developer experience of CDK-TF being awesome. We know that AWS is working on building new Terraform modules for CDK-TF based on the AWS Cloud Control API, which is gonna be awesome because they're gonna be officially supported. They're gonna be fully integrated with CDK-TF. Again, AWS is gonna maintain them. So that would be a strong proposal, and that would still output Terraform, where we have a lot of tooling and ecosystem that we can leverage that brings a lot of value.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions?
I don't know. I want to kind of bring it back to what Jim was saying with eventually consistent Terraform seems like maybe the one of the possible paths forward for that. This whole idea that we have these separate root modules that don't know about each other and don't follow the DAG becomes a problem for everyone, right? It's a problem for all systems that are trying to solve it. You know, Mitchell's putting out that multi-space provider. Cloud Posse has Atmos. However, you know, you're solving it. It's not well done, right? It's never going to be well done because we don't have an actual DAG. We don't
Never
have a way
satisfied.
of connecting it. Yeah. Eventually consistent, keeping like going at it from that perspective, that we had a way of just saying, hey, we have all these root modules. Maybe these are the ones you know, maybe they have some order of priority or something along that line, but keep applying them until they plan clean. That idea seems like something that I haven't heard before that I like as a way of solving that problem, because I don't really know how we can wrap a DAG around all the root modules, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a harder problem to solve than the eventually consistent idea. Anyway, I just thought that was really cool. Jim, if you came up with that and it comes to the point that a few years from now, that's what we're doing, you know, I'm gonna attribute that to you.
Well, the patterns just keep repeating themselves. This is how I used to do Puppet back in the day, you know? So it's just circles.
That is
Yeah.
true.
Good point.
Comes back in vogue. All right. Any other? Well, let's see here. What was this thing posted by Vlad? We do have a GATF operator for.
I remember us talking about it in
Yeah,
here.
it only works with Terraform Cloud.
That was yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
there
this
are
one.
ways of doing it, because what an operator does is basically a bash at its
Yeah.
lowest level, a bash script that says, hey, run this command, sleep 10 seconds, run the command again. That's what a
Yeah.
Kubernetes operator does. And you can do that for Terraform if you
Yeah.
want to.
I mean, we've had
Did I-
similar conversations. Go on.
I was just going to say, I would feel like we don't need Kubernetes to be the thing that actually is running the Terraform. Like, it seems like that is the wrong way of doing it, but it's just the eventually consistent model. And then, yeah, I was thinking about this, but yeah, it's just for automating the TFC like workspaces and whatnot, which is not that big of a thing for me.
Related to this, do you see the need for Cloud API for Terraform, in the sense that just like we have, so for CloudFormation, you give it the YAML, it handles the apply and whatever changes and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Terraform had an alpha around this. It was terrible. Nobody was using it. Do you see the need for that? Would you use that, Matt, Jim? I'm just asking out of curiosity. I don't know anything about anything coming.
I'm not sure I know what you're.
I can bring up a good example for what I think is related to Vlad, and it's come up for us. It's like, if you want to start exposing the stuff that you do with Terraform almost as a service, let's say you want to have an account factory and you want to expose that to the rest of your organization. When somebody wants an account, they can just make a request that way and it happens. And yeah, we could come up with some ornate thing that commits it to source control and that goes through the pipelines, and that's what basically we're doing. But is that really the right solution, or is that just the solution that we have today? I don't know what the answer to that is, but
we do have service broker and service operators, and AWS has service catalog, I think, and marketplace and a bunch of other things. Pulumi, not Pulumi, sorry, what's its name? The annoying AWS service, Proton, is also trying to go towards that, from what I've seen in their public not roadmap but vision thing is, but it's gonna get there in like 2-3 years.
Yeah,
it seems far off, but the fact that they are supporting Terraform with Proton, or they at least talked about it, was cool.
Yeah. I was gonna see if there was any update on that, integrate with Terraform, because that was update. We checked in on that a couple of weeks ago.
So they're digging
Okay,
into
so
it.
there is an update because this was the last one I shared on office hours. So this is the update after that. Hi, everyone. Wanted to provide an update on this issue as I know is much of interest to a lot of people, although I can't still promise any dates. We're making good progress on a Terraform open source support mechanism for Neptune. Our current thinking is to rely on the customer's existing infrastructure pipeline. You'll be able to create Proton templates using HCL modules. And at the time of the service creation or update, Proton will render the templates and make a PR to a configuration repository, allowing your existing infrastructure pipeline to run Terraform, plan, and apply. The service templates can be made up of one or more Terraform modules, so long as the platform team can break them down into individual components, but still provide a single template to developers. This reduces the need for developers to explore all individual modules, provides a way to ensure that they're used according to standards, and let the platform team decide which versions of each module go into each template. So I guess I need to wrap my head more around Proton to kind of understand what that just said. It all makes sense to me in English, but I don't have a vision of what that meant. Anybody translate that to me? Or
I feel like what they're saying is we will render a template and put up a PR, and then your existing Rails will when that PR merges, you're good to go. But like they're not doing as much for you because it's not CloudFormation. They're not actually running that piece of code. You have to deal with that on your end. So it's still the same thing, right? Even if you wrap adding a new GitHub repository and a YAML file, you still need to have something that is the Rails that takes that GitHub, that YAML file and converts it into Terraform that creates the GitHub repository.
I like this.
Yeah, go on.
Because it's still gonna take advantage of like stuff we have in GitHub, like the Atlantis integration, the Spacelift integration, the OPA checks, the conf test. You still get all the advantages of Proton and of what you're doing right now with Terraform. I like the idea of the approach, I think.
Yeah, it creates a lot more work for contractors like Cloud Posse to, keep expanding the Rube Goldberg apparatus. All right. No, that's cool. So basically, you get to use this Proton DSL for declaratively defining everything, but the artifact of that for Terraform would just be some Terraform code as a pull request, and how you handle that pull request, that's on you. If it was CloudFormation, it could just submit that CloudFormation to AWS.
And I guess the main thing that they're providing is that there's a whole workflow around requesting that as a developer. Let's say I need an S3 bucket. You can, through Proton, say, hey, I want an S3 bucket, and then it does its magic, and then you get a PR that somebody has to approve, or it auto merges, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, I get it.
Solve the problem of I have all these Terraform modules that I already built in my company. Nobody knows how to use them unless they learn HCL. Proton is putting an easy to understand UI on top of it, like filling in the Terraform variables. They're giving administrators and Terraform module creators a way to version modules, to release modules, to upgrade module versions. There is a desperate need for that on the market.
In smaller companies, you can just create a YAML file format around things, and then you have your Terraform code read that YAML file. So, but this is like for a large enterprise, I can see this being the way forward. Yeah.
I love it from my perspective, and I don't know if this was a knock on us, but we use the YAML format. Proton is now, we just have a generator for the YAML templates, and we're opening pull requests for YAML templates, and I love it. It sounds really cool.
That's what I do. Yeah, all the time.
I'm so sorry, but I have to drop because I have to.
Yeah, we're out of time for today. So thank you everyone so much. I'm going to start wrapping things up here as well. So thanks, Vlad, for your participation, and everyone else. So if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, head over to youtube.com/c/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/c/cloudposse. If you want to stay in touch with us, lots of ways. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Osterman. We syndicate this office hours and all our historical ones on our podcast. You can go to podcast.cloudposse.com. Listen to it however you listen to podcasts. Next week's office hours will be on Wednesday at 11:30 Pacific, same time, same place. Go to cloudposse.com/office hours to get an invitation and stay in touch. Also, yeah, Cloud Posse is hiring contractors. So if you are a DevOps professional, lots of experience with AWS, Terraform, Kubernetes, we want to hear from you. Go to cloudposse.com/jobs. Again, cloudposse.com/jobs. And to connect with you. Thanks, everyone. Take care.